And I don't know, the whole thing looked like a mess, so I didn't go like as deep into it as I think you did.
I
Yeah.
like drama. That's why I go like
Yeah.
I need some gossip.
I
But
do enjoy talking about it with you.
exactly. Welcome to another episode of Code to Market. We have actually four topics for today, and we'll talk a bit about spies, we'll talk about vulnerabilities, we'll talk about a documentary, and a shitty flight sim that became popular. But let's start actually with that one. I'm personally a big fan of Levels.io, and Levels.io started vibe coding, like this idea of you write code without actually writing it. You just chat with cursor, use the agent, and just write something. And then he kept on tweeting every day about how he started the game, how he continued it, how he did it, etc. Then he started to get sponsors for the game. Then he did a hackathon. Then he started to get swag and build swag from it. I personally think it's genius. I actually had a Twitter discussion with somebody who was putting a lot of hate into Levels.io and what he was doing.
The whole concept of vibe coding is so divisive. He had this good little victory lap tweet of I hit 57,000 MRR, and he has a checklist of like made
He
Redditors.
has more now. I think he has like 97 or
Oh,
so.
I'm sure he does, because just on that, he put a Stripe on that tweet. He put a Stripe link, and he's like, "Today done, made Redditors angry," and then a bunch of feature stuff. Yeah, he's a divisive person to traditional coders or traditional developers or developers at companies and people who want to do things the right way. So it's always interesting to see him, because he's like, "Why aren't more people like me just out here vibe coding, making money, traveling, doing whatever he wants?" It's very interesting.
He has like his own server. He codes everything in one file. Like he's notoriously known for just however, like you build it however you can, and that's it. Like you don't need crazy scale or like this much files or microservices or stuff like that.
Yeah. What I love about him is he's every once in a while you need this type of person who's a call to the, hey, perfect is the enemy of the done. There are always people criticizing people like Levels on their code quality and whatever and their buggy apps. But at the end of the day, code is to make products, and products are to be part of businesses. And yeah, I don't know, I find him an interesting and refreshing angle on that. But how do you feel about his like go to market? I mean, you've spoken against well, you haven't spoken against it, but you've kind of criticized the ethos of build in public before. But this very much felt to me like this is the build in public for vibe coding. I'll show you guys what can be done
Yeah.
with.
And to me, this building public is not really building public. Like we talked about it last time, where I think that a lot of building publics are just fake GTM and distribution. I think that's the truth for Levels.io. Like I think Levels.io has been publishing as he does things, mostly because that's how he gets people to notice him. And of course, like his game became popular very fast because now he has such a following that it's easy to do that. But if you look at Levels.io in the past, he always like built products and started to share what he was doing and why on Twitter. A lot of them were not popular, but then one of them caught up. And then after the one of them caught up, the second one did, the third did, and now it's easier for him. At the same time, like people were saying, like who can be so stupid to sponsor for 5k something in the game? And I think it's the opposite. I think it's very smart, and even more smart for the first person who did it. Mostly because it's the current thing on Twitter for tech. Everybody's talking about it. And then it's not only the people that will play the game. That's actually, I would say, the least important. It's more about Levels.io will tweet about it. He'll mention your brand. He'll do a video showcasing it. And then people are going to talk about you, whether you're dumb or smart for sponsoring it. But one guy was saying like, no, you can't measure it. Like, why would you do it? And of course you can't measure it. But the brand that I think you can get from some of that, I think it's impressive. Do you agree? Will you sponsor Levels.io game or not?
Yeah, I think if there's an angle, definitely you can. Like I think like depending on the product, it can make a lot of sense. I mean, the one he announced in that tweet I referenced already, Message Bird. That's right. They sponsored the birds in the game. So that's just kind of a funny tie-in, and then every time you see a bird, you're like, "Oh, Message Bird." I would ask you, like, okay, the crowds and crowds of people who listen to our podcast, we've picked the smallest niche possible, but For the technical founders of DevTools and their heads of marketing who are listening to this, what's the takeaway here? Like, how do we draw from like this like rogue guy vibe coding? He sells a hat too. He sold the founder mode hats. Now he's got vibe coding hats. Fantastic. What's to be taken from this guy and how he does this, and how do you insert it into a B2B brand?
And I think to add to that, once he saw the game is working, he started to do so many things on top of it. Like he started to sell the hat on his marketplace and he sold a shitload of them. So getting even more revenue out of it. He then created a place that's called portal.peter.com where he publishes games from other vibe coders, and when you land there, there's portals, and once you go to a portal, you go to that game. So he's also promoting other people's game, who then promote him back, because he's like, oh, I'm now in the portals from Levels.io. So he's getting free distribution from some of the other folks that have less people, but they all link back to Peter. And now he's doing the Vibe coding hackathon that he got sponsors. He got like really good judges, like Karpathy is there, Mr. Doob, the creator of 3JS, which is used for all of the animations. And he got like really good jury. He's giving a prize, and everybody now is doing games for vibe coding. And again, to participate, most of them are then in a portal, which then links back to him. And then all of the juries that he has are people that are very well known that are also tweeting about this, which makes even more people learn about the game. So to me, what I think Levels.io is really good at is he's a genius of distribution.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think a lot of times in B2B, we're guilty of when we catch a little bit of lightning in a bottle, we just kind of let it sit there. When there are people who are amplifying our message or catching on to our vision, like I love that he created this marketplace. He's like, oh, people are catching on to the vibe coding vision. How do I make them part of my thing? So that they don't, like, rather than letting them all go out. Because a lot of times founders will do this. They'll inspire their customers and so on to go and do stuff without capturing that interest and those voices and using the amplification.
And I think he's a genius of distribution in the sense that maybe he has a lot more followers than all of the people that are doing vibe coding games. But if you sum the followers of all of the other vibe coders that are now part of Portal or of his hackathon, they have more than him, which means that he has improved visibility and distribution. As you're saying, like, I don't think companies think about this and how they can include others and work with partners, increase their brand.
A lot of times, like there'll be someone in your company Slack who goes, so-and-so just tweeted about us. They have 10,000 followers, 100,000 followers, and then everyone just goes and likes it. The best founders, the best heads of marketing will immediately DM that person. They'll immediately comment on the thread like, hey, let's find a way to work together more. Let's do more. Let's amplify. Like, how can we raise the stakes with each other?
Exactly. And then what other things can you sell? Like the Vibe Coder hats is genius as well. Like he did the same with Founder Mode. He did the same with Make Europe Great Again. Like he catches stuff and is controversial and ships things very fast. Like, yeah, I think he's so fucking good.
He's good at, you love surfing the wave, and he's good at that.
I do.
He's very good at that. So I think that those are some good notes on building in public. Let's go to the opposite end of the spectrum, scheming in secret. So we talked a long time ago about this competitor page by Rippling where they had like the snakes like eating up the false statements by Deel. This rivalry has gotten out of hand. Rippling's now suing Deel. We know this isn't super like DevTool relevant, but it's in the space. It's interesting. It's also like there's some lessons to be learned here. So my understanding is Rippling noticed that Deel, we're not sure how they noticed, but I think it was...
They noticed because they had one employee that was searching Deel in Salesforce and in Lean on average 23 times a day.
Yeah, but I think that was part of their investigation. I think what happened first was Deel was probably just like somehow always one step ahead on any of their competitive deals. So anytime there was an opportunity where someone was evaluating Rippling and Deel, I think all of a sudden Deel would make just the right move and they were one step ahead of Rippling. And Rippling, I think, probably looked into this because they're like, how are they doing this? And then they find this guy who's searching 20 times a day, Deel, and they're like, okay, how can we catch this guy? They set up a honeypot because it was basically just like the lawyer and a couple of the executives, like the CTO and the founders who knew about this person. So I think what they did was they They like said something that they emailed the Deel executives that they had some channel about their Deel competitive deals or Deel ex-employees or something.
No, they had something on the channel that would be very hurtful for them, and then they faked a Slack message,
Yes.
which was actually redacted just to make it people more. And they waited and see if the spy would go on into that Slack channel.
Yes. But they somehow made it so that they could implicate the Deel executives. But
Yeah, so they sent an email to the deal
yes.
executives, the lawyer did, saying like, hey, if like people are talking in Rippling channel about something that could be very hurtful for you, and that's it. That's the only thing they said. And then they noticed that the spy entered 10 times to that channel that day, and the channel was empty.
Yes.
Nobody was there, and
The
it was
only
just being created 30 minutes before.
Yeah, the only people who could have known about that channel were
Yes.
the founders of Rippling, the lawyer, and the executives over there. So therefore, they clearly told the spy. The spy found the channel, and now there's a huge lawsuit. Corporate espionage is illegal, like blah blah blah. So like, my first lesson is don't commit corporate espionage. As tempting as it is, there's always competitors. It's always tempting to like get into this. We're gonna get into some more like heated competitiveness on our next topic, but it's just such a dumb thing to do, to be like paying someone as a spy at your competitor. Just win the right way, I say. Like, then you don't have to deal with all this, no pun intended. And yeah, for Rippling, how clever to set up a honeypot. They did the right thing. They didn't go public until they like had done all the right and necessary steps.
And I think for them, it was great marketing as well. Like now, everybody's talking about Rippling because, like, I remember, like, I read the lawsuit and it was more than that. Then, like, the police went to the guy tried to hide his phone and put it
Yes.
on the bathroom, and it was like a movie. And, like, it was just everybody's talking about Rippling now. So, in the end, it was, I think, worse for Deel. Maybe they won some competitive deals, but now people are thinking Deel is evil and Rippling is just all over the place, which is funny, taking into account that the founder of Rippling was sued and removed from the company that he was before, allegedly because of David Sachs. I don't know, like the truth there. But just interesting that they ended up leveraging this spy for them to be more popular now.
Yeah, I forgot about the whole like, because this is in Ireland, right? Like where that employee is. They show up at his house to confiscate his phone. He like hides the phone. Nobody knows where that is. He's allegedly deleting messages. It's a whole crazy saga. Don't get into that mess, guys. Like, it's just not worth it.
I agree. I don't think we have a lot more to say. It was,
No.
to me, just funny that they show up a lot, and just interesting that we now, like, we're likely gonna get a Netflix show on Rippling Spy. But talking a bit about competition, but competition that is legal, let's talk a bit about what happened with Vercel and Cloudflare this weekend. I don't know if you saw, but Vercel published a CVE. A CVE is a vulnerability, basically, that existed on the middleware for Next. It didn't affect all of the apps. It actually, I would say, mostly affected apps that had static pages that needed authentication to be seen. Like somebody could enter, could see those. And it basically would hurt companies that are only using middleware to handle authentication, not the rest. The problem was that they knew that, they kept it for 5 days or so. Then they shipped the fix for it. On the blog post, they first mentioned yeah, it's not even that important because our firewall solves it. However, they didn't work as much with the partners, so Cloudflare, Netlify, and a lot of the others that are using Next got pissed off about it. At the same time, people who hate Next, which there are a lot of them, use this opportunity to just say more bad shit about Next and talk about how Next is mostly focused on Vercel and not the rest. There's a project called OpenNext that people are using. At the same time, the CEO of Cloudflare, I think, was pissed off. They actually went down for some time while they were trying to fix it, and they post a GitHub project called Verse, like Divorce but Vercel, that basically you could put your Vercel Next project and it would automatically migrate it to Cloudflare, to which Guillermo Rauch got pissed off about the message, and I think it makes sense. And he answered a bit about things that Cloudflare did wrong in the past, and it was just interesting. Like, it was CEOs fighting on Twitter. There were people like saying bad things about Next, using the CVE for it. There were others that were trying to explain and talk about the CVE. I don't know. What's your take on everything that's been happening here?
You know, it just looked like a mess to me. The whole thing looked like a mess. It's always hard with this stuff when you're a company to know, well, there's a security vulnerability. How quickly do we tell people? Do we tell people before there's a fix, which potentially opens up like then more people know about it? Do we tell our partners and when? And what kind of stance do we take? Do we try and sweep it under the rug as a small thing? Do you always exaggerate it? Like, who knows? And then there's the whole thing with there's a lot of people like waiting in the wings these days to hate on Next. And yes. So it's interesting whenever something like this happens, and this happens at lots of bigger companies. Vercel's a bigger company now that, RouchG and Vercel and XJS they all have haters. There are people ready to collect their Twitter engagement or to try and promote their company or product by hating on it. And I don't know, the whole thing looked like a mess, so I didn't go like as deep into it as I think you did. Yeah.
I like drama. That's why I go like,
yeah.
I need some gossip. But
I do enjoy talking about it with you.
Exactly. But a couple of things I have to say is like, one, we had a huge vulnerability at Auth0 when we were big. And it was we had to get everybody to update different versions of SDKs, not just basically update the backend that it would be solved. So it was in that sense similar to this because it wasn't the framework, but it was an SDK. And we actually took 4 months to announce the vulnerability because we wanted to make sure that all of our enterprise customers had migrated, which was very hard. We wanted to get new versions. We wanted to create some messaging on like when or you would be at risk or not and how we would work. But in the end, we worked with partners who also were doing SDKs to get them to fix the SDKs. And in the end, it worked really well. Like people were happy. And I actually think we did right in waiting 4 months, which sounds insane. But
it doesn't sound that insane to me. What sounds insane is when you first said people were upset that the turnaround was 5 days or something. I was like,
no, the problem was that they were saying that they hid it for 5 days before publishing and they were pissed off. And to me, it was because they didn't include partners, they didn't include others, and that's why everybody was pissed off about it. But I don't know, as I was saying, like, we took 4 months and it was okay because we included the partners, we got every enterprise client, like handhold them to move it. We did the same with self-service. Like we took 4 months so that we could send multiple emails with self-service, help with support and stuff like that without saying that there was a vulnerability. Like, so couple of things that I have in mind is number one, I really like that Vercel said sorry. Like Guillermo has a pinned tweet on his Twitter saying, "We fucked up. I'm sorry. We didn't include the partners. We're gonna get better. So send me please all of the complaints that you have." That to me is incredible. Like he said sorry, most founders do not, and he was open to complaints. Like give me all of your complaints just to make it better. Even Paul Graham retweeted that saying like this is founder mode, and I agree. I think in that they did a really good job. And like you learn, like this was probably the first huge vulnerability that they had and they didn't think of like, I don't know, I think being honest and open about like in which cases it is very bad and in which cases it's not that bad. Like I would put that into a blog post to explain it. I don't think they did that extra effort. And the worst part is they didn't include their frenemies, I would call them frenemies, that use Next, like Netlify, Cloudflare, like they need to include them, even if they are enemies, so that they know that they need to change it. Those to me were the main 2 mistakes. The other thing I think a lot about Next is, I think Next needs to do a better job of explaining which features that Next is shipping are for any cloud service and which ones are more for like a front-end cloud, as Vercel calls them. So the idea is, if a feature is for a front-end cloud, I think they need to specify what a front-end cloud is, so that then the competitors could have something like that. Like you could have a spec for Cloudflare or Netlify to say, if you follow this spec, you can also host Next.js like us. And then be honest with people on this feature will only work on a front-end cloud, which could be Vercel. Eventually there will be others, but for now it's us. The rest of the features, maybe it works for others. And I think if they are a bit more honest and clear on that, they will get a bit less hate from people. Again, but I think it all starts with Guillermo saying sorry, which I think is true, and then learning from that. So I think they didn't handle the vulnerability right. They did handle the post of it, I think, pretty good.
Yeah. Well, what do you think of the back and forth with Cloudflare?
I
mean, it starts with Matthew Prince, CEO of Cloudflare.
Yeah.
kind of being a bit of a bully, and then Rauchti replying. Is it right for
It's
Rauchti to
yeah.
reply? Do you think it's important, or do you think it's
I
just a
would have
lightning rod?
replied if I were Rauch. Like in general, I would say like do not reply. But if the CEO of your competitor is giving you shit publicly, I would reply. Like, and I think Guillermo replied with style. Like he mentioned one thing that was a big vulnerability from them, which again it was a big problem, but it was in 2017. He mentioned there as well on how they tried to do it and they couldn't, how they tried to work together. So I think it was good that he replied. The only thing I would have added to that tweet is saying something like Cloudflare, one of the first vulnerabilities or something like that, they went down for a long time, but then it was in 2017. From there, they got better. And Vercel could have said something like, this was our first big vulnerability or something like that. Like, we didn't do it great this time, but we'll get better. Like, he could have mentioned that there as well. But I don't know, like, to me, if a CEO attacks directly on you and you have either something to say or something to defend yourself, I would reply. Like, just don't be an asshole and reply with data and facts.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It's just hard. There's not a clear way to. We've talked about this before, but there's just not a clear
Yes.
way to win on these
No.
like internet things. It mostly just amplifies what people already feel about you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Let's move topics.
Yeah.
Talk a bit about our newest documentary.
All right, last little one. We mentioned that we saw a trailer for this before, so we don't have to talk too long about it. But Supabase put out like a 10-minute documentary on StackBlitz / Bolt / Eric Simons, its founder. And that was interesting to me because it was way more about Eric and Bolt than I anticipated. It was kind of inspiring. Like it talked about the struggles of the startup. And Eric has an interesting story. He's famous / infamous for being an employee who used to sleep and eat and shower at the AOL offices. So he's like your absolute founder mode founder. And, you know, he uses the term, this was our last bullet in the chamber. It was Bolt working or we're dead as a company. And it's a great little dramatic 10-minute thing. There's barely a mention of Supabase in there, which I find interesting because it actually reflects how Supabase is in the product. Supabase is a thing that if you use Bolt and some of these other agents, like if you use Replic's agent, it'll be Neon, that the agent will sometimes say, hey, you need a backend for this, so now you need to create a Supabase account or a Neon account. Go do that, and then I can do the rest of this work for you. And it's interesting in these new AI as channels marketing stuff that Supabase put in a great expensive effort to just promote the product and the founder and try and keep their momentum going because it must be such a great source for new users for them.
To me, there's two parts. Like, I actually don't think they published it just so that Bolt becomes more popular. Because of course, like if has more users, they will use more Supabase and Supabase will make more money. Again, as you said, Ripley with Neon, it's the same. But to me, they did this because Supabase always talks to developers. Now, instead of talking to developers, they want to talk to founders who create these AI agent apps, because there's going to be more and more of these AI agent apps. And I think what Supabase is realizing is that convincing one developer, you get 100 a month. Convincing one Bolt.new, maybe you get 100K a month. So to me, this video is not actually to get more people to Bolt. It's to show how they helped Bolt and how they appreciate them as a customer, so that Bolt shares it and it becomes more popular, and other companies that are similar to Bolt, the founders sees it and talks to them. But I agree with you, it's interesting that there's not that much mention of Supabase. I would have expected more. But I think it's a bold, different way to try to get these new customer types from them. For them, that's interesting.
It's a platform marketing
Yes.
play. It's saying, hey, we can be part of your platform, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, they really understated that. I feel like they could have done more. They could have gotten Eric. I mean, he said nice things about Supabase and why he went with them. But yeah, I'm curious. It goes back to one of my themes this year is the like influencer content marketing of 2025 and beyond. And this just felt like a way to do it right. So I was very interested in that.
To me, what was missing here was more data. Like if I'm a Bolt, I want to understand like how fast are your databases created? How will people be able to use them? Like why did Bolt choose Supabase and Ripley pick Neon? Like what are the differences? What is best for each use case? Like that's what I think I expected more in the video and was nothing about. That's the main thing I would have
I have
expected.
a
Because again, this is not about Supabase per se. It's like how Supabase connects to these AI agents
yeah.
apps.
I've worked with videographer. Like you could tell they used a professional videographer.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm like, oh, this was expensive because to do video like this in that docu style,
I
you're
agree.
paying someone tens of thousands of dollars at a minimum.
Yes.
Sometimes into the six figures, even just for a 10-minute video like that. And the problem I have with those is that those videographers and the producers they have, they don't understand what they're interviewing for. They're making art first and foremost. And I noticed that too. I mean, like, yeah, they didn't talk about Supabase enough. They didn't talk about the technology. It was very story lofty, whatever. One thing you can do to prevent that if you're going to make that type of investment is have an engineer or a very technical PMM on the site, not your PR or comms person, but like someone very technical or very close to technical, and
I agree.
they can do that
I think
stuff.
it's a smart new idea, but they could have done better.
Yeah.
And again, I think it's more about the technology, how it works, and the stats. Because I think Supabase, Neon, and PlanetScale are now gonna fight for all of these agent apps just because they are much bigger customers than just a regular user.
Yeah, but it's interesting to see them do this and start the iteration process. Hopefully, I mean, hopefully they all get really good at this because I want to see what good looks like on this and try it out
Agree.
myself. So yeah, cool. Well, that's probably plenty from us today. Cammy's got her work cut out to edit this. Thanks, Cammy. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all.